Have you ever had someone tell you you're collecting the wrong thing? Like you're wasting your money buying all physical movies, or that you're dumb for going all in on digital? Yeah, let's talk about it.
Welcome back, sir. All systems for gaming will be prepared in a few minutes. For now, feel free to grab a cup of coffee and have a good day.
Hey everyone, Mike here. Welcome back to the Marvel Man Cave. And today I kind of want to, it's almost an extension of the video that I did a few weeks ago on why I still collect physical media in 2025. Thank you to everyone who watched that video. That video blew up way more than I was expecting. And as you can imagine, the comments section was a lot of positives. I don't want to discount that. It was way more positives than negatives, but there were a few people in the comments that I noticed, but it got me thinking, because it's not the first time I've experienced this, and I'm sure it's not for you either, that someone was basically trying to tell me that I was wrong for thinking collecting physical media was the, I don't know to say right thing to do, but for lack of a better term, that's kind of what we're talking about. I say at the end of every one of my videos, collect what you love. And that's not just lip service. It's one of those things I truly believe in. I remember early on in kindergarten, I grew up in North Carolina. Basketball is king in North Carolina. My first day of kindergarten, the questions that I got from people who I had just literally met was like, do you like NC State or UNC? You had to pick a side right off the bat. There is a fierce divide down there with those schools. This is before Duke was really a good school. It was the early 80s, so Duke hadn't really become relevant at that point. But you had to choose. I've also noticed it just kind of in the collecting sphere. I have a lot of Funkos. I remember posting on my Instagram channel one point about a Funko that I really liked, and someone had left a comment that, imagine collecting Funkos and thinking it's a Marvel Legend, which I never actually stated was a thing to begin with, but someone felt like they had to tear down something that I was enjoying in the presumption that it makes them feel better that they collect Marvel Legends. And I'm sure someone probably does the same thing to them. They're like, oh, Marvel Legends are dumb. Maybe McFarlane toys are better, or Hot Toys or whatever. It will never end. There is someone out there that thinks that whatever you collect and I collect is stupid, and whatever they collect is dumb. But I don't understand the mindset that my thing has to be good, so that means your thing has to be worse. It literally is like, collect what you love. I don't collect things for other people. I don't have these movies on my shelf. I don't have my Funkos. I don't have the figures that I collect to make anybody else happy. These are all here because they bring me joy. And I'm assuming the things that you have in your room bring you joy, and that's why you collect them. So why would it be up to me to tell you that the things that you have in your house and the things that you collect are stupid? It doesn't make my collection any better. It doesn't make it more valuable. It doesn't make it more wanted. It doesn't do anything to my collection to say that yours is worse. That's why I don't understand what the differences in this are. And it's one of those things. My channel is called Marvel Man Cave. I have DC stuff in here. It's just I tend to steer towards Marvel more, but obviously in the comic book realm, it's Marvel or DC, and for some reason, people feel like you have to choose a side, like you can't like both. But in the collecting realm, I don't really understand. It's like, yeah, I can not like something, but that doesn't mean that I feel like you have to not like it too. Like, I don't need to prove you wrong to show that I'm right. So today, because I do mostly physical media, and the video that kind of blew up, that kind of inspired this video, was on physical media, I really thought I would talk through some of the pros and cons of both, and hopefully kind of along the way remind us all why we started this journey of collecting whatever it was, and kind of spark some joy back into it and be like, this isn't something that you need to do to beat someone else or make someone else feel worse or anything like that. Like, in the end of the day, at least for me, it may not be for everybody, but this is something that I enjoy. I like picking a movie off the shelf and going to watch it. I like looking at my figures and my action figures and my collectibles on the shelf. And sometimes I just find myself looking at them and being like, I enjoy that. I have a memory of picking it up or something along that line that brings back that joy. And I think that's probably why we all started something, to get something, to feel something. And that's not a bad thing, no matter what it is. So let's talk about some of the pros and cons for physical media, just to show that nobody is right and everybody is right all at the same time. To set the stage, I'll go ahead and upfront say, like, I have about 896 movies on physical as of today. Now, I used to have a lot more than that. I've mentioned a couple times, like I used to have well over 1,000 DVDs, and I'd moved so much as I was when I was young that I just went ahead and digitized all of them, and then just got rid of all my DVDs. So I've been in the process for about the past 2 years of just kind of slowly rebuilding the collection. Honestly, not buying everything that I had before, because there's some movies that I'm like, I'm never going to watch these again. I bought them on DVD for whatever reason, they were cheap or whatnot. But so I have about 896 as of today. I'm sure by the time this video is released, I'll probably have more. But so that's where I have stand on the physical media. But when I look at it on digital, I have about 470 movies, predominantly through my Apple TV, iTunes, whatever you want to call it, digital library. And I have over 1,300 movies on my Plex server. A lot of my Plex ones, because I digitized a lot of the DVDs and stuff like that, that's just kind of the difference between what I used to have and what I have now. And I have kind of duplicated some of what I used to have on DVD. So that just kind of sets the tone. I go into both camps. I just have a kind of like Marvel and DC. I just kind of have a preference that I prefer the physical item to the digital item. And for me, a couple reasons for that is, one, I feel like this is true ownership. I went to a store, or let's be honest, probably went to Amazon and it got delivered to my house, because how many stores can you go into now? I got this delivered to my house. I have the copy. And a lot of occasions, I also have the digital copy that I redeemed for it, but it is on my shelf. No one's coming to take this off my shelf. They're not going to all of a sudden be like, you know what, I want to redo the end of Nightmare on Elm Street, and I'm going to take all the physical copies in the world, burn them to the ground, and then you're going to get the different copy that I want you to see. No one's coming to do that. Like, I have this movie. I know I watched a video the other day where they were talking about some of the outtakes at the end of Toy Story 2, and they have since deleted one of the outtakes with Stinky Pete, but I still have the DVD copy that originally came out with that. So I still have access to that. And I know you can probably find stuff online, but you can't always count on that. So there is something to be said for having the copy of the movie that I really love. I'd say a couple other reasons. You know, we talk about quality, and I know I collect a range of 4K and Blu-ray. And I do think, like, I notice a difference between the 4K version and I would say the streaming version of these. I have a 4K TV, it's an OLED. I definitely notice when I watch things between the two services. I would say it's not a huge difference, and I'm willing to bet like not everybody does. And if you enjoy the digital version, then that's fine. But we all know, like, they're compressed when they're online, and you're gonna be subject to your internet and stuff like that. So I just enjoy the higher quality version. I enjoy the higher quality audio, the video. It's just the preference. It's just what I like. I would say special features are another big draw for me. Like, I like seeing outtakes. I like seeing the deleted scenes. I like seeing all that stuff, and you just don't get those on digital. You know, maybe if you buy the library or buy it from like Apple or something like that, you do get some of that. But like on streaming services and stuff like that, you don't get any of that. Like Disney Plus, you can watch the new Fantastic Four movie whenever it comes out, but it's probably not going to have any of the special features with it. The only way you can get those special features is if you own a copy of the movie, whether it be the physical version or the digital version. You're not going to get that on streaming. I would say, along with that, offline access. You know, if the internet goes out in my house, I can still pop this in and watch it. My discs do not require an internet connection. And as someone who grew up in the, I would say, the golden age of video games, when you could just pop a cartridge into a system and 3 minutes later you'd be up and playing. As someone, the first time I bought like one of the Xboxes and PlayStations, which is another rivalry, and I have both, that I had to plug it into the internet, had to be connected to the internet, or I had to download the game off the disc, and you had to spend, and next thing you know, the rest of my night is sitting there waiting for a game to download. There's something to be said for just walking over to a 4K player, popping in a disc, and 3 minutes later, you're up and running. And I would think the big one for me is just personal enjoyment. I mentioned it before. I just like owning these. I like walking over to the shelf and kind of looking over. It reminds me of the days when I used to go to Blockbuster or other rental stores, look over at my shelf and be like, what do I want to watch tonight? And taking the time to do that. I don't get the same enjoyment on scrolling on my digital library. But I would say some of the cons, because it's not without cons. I think the big one, it takes up space. Like, as anyone who's followed this channel over the past year, you notice I've added more shelves to the man cave. over this year, and I will probably at some point need to add more. So these things, they take up space. As you add more stuff, they take up more space, and space is finite. So at some point you either run out or you got to get rid of stuff to make room for more stuff. Say it's also one of those things like discs are, I don't want to say fragile, like they're pretty robust. Like I'm not necessarily worried about it being dropped, because if you watch the FedEx driver delivered my copy of Tron the other day, I would have been freaking out if I was a little bit worried that discs were super fragile, because they were treating that like Ace Ventura Pet Detective. But they, I mean, they can get scratched. You can take one of these out, the disc can get scratched, they can come out. We've heard of movies that have suffered from like disc rot and are no longer viewable in that respect anymore. That is part of the reason that I back up every movie I buy. I digitize and put on my Plex server. So, if this copy of Nightmare on Elm Street, which is honestly getting replaced with the box set coming out, if this gets scratched, at least I have a copy on my Plex server that I could watch, and then I can replace this at some point in time if I need to. Someone made the point that my collection could go up in a fire. It's totally true. Fire. We had anybody who watched one of my earlier videos know we had some water damage in the basement. Stuff can flood. You can lose stuff. Yeah, any natural disaster, a tornado can rip through here tomorrow, and the whole house is gone along with the collection. My only argument with that would be is like, my collection is probably not going to be the first thing that I'm going to be concerned about if my house burns down or things like that. Yeah, eventually it will be. I'll be like, oh, I lost a lot of stuff, but stuff can be replaced. So yeah, that is a legitimate risk. I concede that. Another thing I would say is it made me laugh because when we were at the airport and we were looking for something to do, and I was like, we were in Australia and we saw a JB Hi-Fi, which is kind of like Australia's version, I would say, of Best Buy. They sold movies in their big store, but they had one in the airport. And I jokingly said to my wife, I was like, oh, maybe I can go in and get a movie that I can watch on the plane, knowing that they're not going to sell a 4K version of any movie on it because it's not a portable format. Like I can't just take these. I'm not going to set up a 4K player and plug it into the headrest of the airplane to watch it. I'm not really taking these with me on trips to go watch in hotel rooms and stuff like that, because I'm not going to pack a 4K player. So like they're not portable. It's not something you can really take with you. It really is a format to be best enjoyed at home. And as someone who's bought both physical and digital, sometimes the physical versions, they cost a little bit more. Like you can usually get pretty good sales. I'm probably sure that at some point the Dark Knight trilogy that I just got not that long ago probably went down to something like $9 for all three movies or something like that, and I paid more than that for those. So yeah, you can probably sometimes, if you keep an eye out for sales, you can probably get digital movies a good bit cheaper than you'd be able to get a physical one. So for digital media, I will start. Let's start with the cons because I don't want to end with a negative. So I would say with the cons, the big one for me is there's no true ownership. It's one of those things that you buy the license for the movie, and that can be taken from you at any point in time. Amazon just got sued because of basically a class action lawsuit. Says their buy button is misleading because you're not really buying the movie, you're buying a license to the movie that they can basically reject at any point in time that they want. Microsoft earlier this year, they completely removed their ability to buy movies and TV shows. They got rid of their digital storefront. You're still able to access stuff through like whatever service. I don't have one of their accounts, so like whatever service, whatever their version of like iTunes or whatever it was, you can still view the movies that you bought, but you can't transfer those to another service. So if Microsoft one day decide like we're just getting rid of that, like your movies are gone. They've already said they're not going to refund people because it's basically you agreed to the terms of service. That little thing that we probably all clicked OK as soon as it popped up, so it disappeared because we didn't want to take the time to read it. Microsoft is not a small company, and they got out of the ability to buy or for you to buy movies and TV shows. Others can follow suit. I would say another thing is like just the editing and censorship of movies. I remember, I think it was the movie Splash, because it's a Disney movie now. Like in the 80s, you saw Daryl Hannah's naked butt. It was a seminal moment in my childhood, but you're not going to see it on Disney Plus. That has been edited out. And that's a small thing. Like I talked earlier, I think in that physical media video about the multiple endings of the room. I think it's 1410. Completely the John Cusack horror movie that was based on a Stephen King novel. I'll put the right title up here. Drawing a blank on it right now. But there's like 4 different endings, but the ending that I saw in theater is not the ending that I watched on Netflix. and I have no choice but to watch that ending. Again, going back to special features, like I can't watch it. So you do kind of run into some ability for these corporations to decide what is okay for you to watch and what they deem acceptable for you to watch. I think I'm an adult, I can decide. One of the things for me that drives me nuts about my Apple digital library is I have no control over the posters. They change them not frequently, but they change them often enough. And I don't know if it's some probably psychological thing where they're like, oh, we'll do this. And that way they'll watch them more often, which I don't know why they care. I've already given them money. But I have no control over the posters. That's part of the reason why I really love my Plex account, because I do have some control. I have a lot of control over the way they appear. Apple's appears in that little horizontal. I prefer a more movie-like poster. And for the longest time, a lot of the little tiles on my Apple library, like the posters were zoomed in. You couldn't even see what the movie was. You had to look at it below. You couldn't actually see the post art. And that drove me up a wall. So like I don't really have any control over my collection. I like to sort movies in Plex by actors and different genres and stuff like that. I have all my Marvel movies together. I have all my Christopher Nolan movies together. I put on my John Favreau, John Cusack. Like those movies are in collections in my Plex library. I don't have that control over my Apple library. It's A to Z. That's it. Or most recently bought. So that's the control that I have over my collection that I bought. And I think the other big one for me is just the ongoing dependency. And I'm going to lump streamers in with this as well, because I did switch to basically streaming music years ago. I worked in a music store for the longest time. I used to have a huge CD collection, and I still kept a chunk of them. About the same time, I got rid of the DVDs. I got rid of a lot of the CDs, digitized them. But then I just stopped buying music. I started using the streaming services because one, it was space, and two, it was like it honestly, it was cheaper. I totally concede. It was just like I could buy the amount of CDs that I would buy each month versus the amount that I pay for a streaming service. It wasn't even close. I used to buy a lot of CDs. It's so much easier, and I can take risks on stuff without incurring any extra cost. I have to pay that for the rest of my life. If I want to continue to listen to that new Metallica album that I did not buy on a CD, I have to keep my Apple Music subscription until the day I die. That is a bill that will never end. Same thing with streaming services. I don't own anything on there. If there's movies on there that I want to watch, I have to continue to pay that fee until that day I die. I don't really like having recurring bills as if I can avoid it. If I can not have stuff like that, I won't. Music is something I enjoy enough, I listen to it enough. I don't mind paying that little amount every month. But the amount of streaming services and stuff that you have to pay for to kind of make sure you get everything that you want at a point in time, that's kind of where I'm starting to draw the line, because I'd rather just own the movies that I know I want to watch and have them when I want to watch them rather than relying on what movies are available on what service and when. Let's end on a positive note and the pros of digital media. I would say the big one for me is just the convenience. As I mentioned, we recently went to Australia. I loaded up my iPad full of movies. I had everything from Plex that I wanted downloaded. I had my Apple Music library downloaded. So I had movies that I wanted to watch on a flight. I watched the entire Mad Max trilogy on that flight to Australia, along with a couple Transformers movies and a couple other new ones that I just recently added in my collection. So having those digital movies available literally in a device that's this thick is unparalleled. That's something that, the physical part can't compete with. I would say also hand in hand with that was just the cross device access. I had everything on my iPad, but when we got to the hotel in Australia, they had the ability to cast stuff to the TV in the hotel. So I was able to take it from my iPad and we were able to watch stuff in the hotel. They also had some of the services available that I have available. So I was able to watch Apple TV stuff with my account in the hotel room. So that kind of cross device stuff. So it was kind of felt a little bit like being at home because stuff was on digital. I'll kind of split this next one into two parts, like the cloud storage stuff. It provides you a little bit of safety because so if a tornado rips through here, it's not going to wipe out my digital movie collection because that's stored on Apple servers or whoever servers somewhere in the cloud, and that is backed up. But even with my Plex collection that is stored locally, I also have an account with Backblaze that backs all my movies up, everything that's on that hard drive, up to a completely different server offline. So if something were to happen, even if the hard drive were to get corrupted, I have the ability to re-download those movies or get access to them. They will not be gone forever. I will have access to them. And that is another thing that, kind of if the tornado rips through here, I won't be able to get this version of Nightmare on Elm Street back, but I can get the version back that I had on my hard drive because that's backed up to a cloud somewhere. I would say the automatic upgrades was something that really sold me and why I'd kind of gone all in on digital for a number of years, because I had a lot of movies that I'd bought. I guess it was probably in 480 back in the day. And I remember when Apple made the announcement that like all movies that you had were getting an automatic upgrade to 1080. And that was a huge advantage. I was sitting on, we'll say, the DVD of Nightmare on Elm Street, and that wasn't getting upgraded to a Blu-ray version. Like I would have had to go on out and buy that version. So to get the digital version of my movies just to automatically upgrade it, and they did it again when everything went to 4K. So like now basically all the movies in my iTunes library that are available in 4K, I might have bought them when they were a 480. I didn't buy other versions of them down the road. They just automatically got upgraded to whatever the best version was. I mean, that's a huge advantage. Like that's something that you can't really you're not really going to be able to do in the physical world, is just automatically upgrade your collection. So that's a huge positive. So I think that pretty well covers a lot of the pros and cons. I know there's probably other ones down there. If you have other pros and cons for either side, drop them in the comments below, but just note that's not the point of this video. I'm not trying to advocate for one or the other. I'm just kind of trying to point out that, yeah, your points are valid, but my points are valid too. But in the ultimate end, neither of them really matter, because whatever you decide to collect, it's what you enjoy, and that's what we should be about. Like I enjoy collecting physical movies. I don't care if in 30 years they won't make a 4K or an 8K or whatever it would be at the time. Honestly, I don't care. I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. I've lived through enough change in my life. I'll adapt. I will. It'll just happen. But I'm not really worried about it because I enjoy this now. I don't really worry about what's going to happen in the future and what's going to be available in the future. I'm like, I enjoy this now. I've collected things over my entire life. I went from collecting Matchbox cars and He-Man figures when I was a kid, and I kind of still collect some of those nowadays, so it comes back around at some point. But the things I've collected over the years has grown and shifted and things like that. But the one thing that's remained constant with all that is I've enjoyed collecting all of it. It's one of those things like I'll have my time with a thing or a set, and then I'll move on. I don't feel bad about it. I don't look back on it as a waste of money. I'm like, I got my time, I got my enjoyment, and then I've moved on to something else. I also have made it a point in my life to not make anybody feel bad about the stuff they collect. So really, whatever it is you collect, if you need to hear it from me, if someone else is telling you that you're dumb, you're not. If it's something you enjoy collecting, continue to collect it. You love it. It brings you joy. That's really what this stuff is truly about. So that's all I got for today. I'd really love to hear your thoughts on this topic in the comments below. So please drop them down there. As always, collect what you love. And I really mean it.